Hi, I'm John Swartz. I'm with USA Today. I'm the bureau chief for San Francisco, and I'm in charge or responsible for the tech section and what we do in the paper and online. Before we start, I want to ask you guys, how many of you intend or want to ask questions of this panel? That's it? Wait, come on. Okay, good. The reason I'm asking you is because the more of you raise your hands, the less of me, which I think you're going to probably appreciate in the end. So look, before I start, I just want to say a couple things, because Rachel she inspired me. She said, you know what, just speak the truth, tell people what you think. And it gets me in trouble, but I'm going to do it, because what the hell? Yeah. So Wednesday, I'm at this event. You probably heard of it. It's a very, I'm sitting there, and it's like a privileged event, very white, very male, very young. And I'm sitting there for 2.5 hours looking at these nice, shiny objects. I cover tech, and I kind of step back. I kind of float above my body in a kind of weird Zen way. And I say to myself, what the fuck am I covering this for when there are all these other important things like homeless people, issues of diversity, issues of politics, issues of culture and tech? And that's why our paper's doing that. And there's a person that I work with who I want to mention, who I think you should read, and I think you should get to know. It's Jessica Gwynn.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? So Jessica Gwynn, I've known her for years, and one of the things we talked about over the years was her working with me covering this, and that would be her focus, covering inclusion, diversity. And we talked about this for 2 or 3 years. Finally, we were able to hire her. There were at least 20 other publications that tried to hire her. And you know what the difference was? We made the decision to make this her top priority, inclusion. And my boss, my editor-in-chief, to his credit, said, yes, go for it. And since she started doing that, here's the other thing. A lot of the publications that were trying to hire her said, you know, we'll hire you, but you can't really cover that. There's not really an audience for that. That's no bullshit. That's true. That's true. And once she started covering it, guess what? They all cover it now. The amount of traffic, the amount of response, the amount of satisfaction in covering something like this, you can't measure that. It's not like writing about a new iPad, and I don't mean to pick on them, but I mean in general, well, a little bit. But you know, I mean, in general, it's to me writing about people and the way technology works with them or doesn't work with them is so much more interesting. Life is so short. I mean, you got to grab by the gusto. So anyway, I'm finished preaching, and I'd like all of our esteemed panelists to please introduce yourselves and tell everyone who you are. Start with Abby.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Abby Maldonado. I work for Pinterest on diversity programs. Prior to joining Pinterest, I studied labor relations, and so I've always had a fascination with workplace dynamics. And really, diversity has been something that I'm personally passionate about, so to be able to apply it to my real job has been really exciting.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anitra Collins. I'm with Twitter. I'm one of the diversity program managers there. Prior to joining Twitter, I was at Google for years, just working on diversity and inclusion, and it's something I'm just extremely passionate about, so I'm just happy to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Williams, head of diversity and inclusion at Yelp. Born and raised in the Bay Area, grew up in Silicon Valley, right in San Mateo, went to UC Berkeley, so I'm a homegirl.
Good morning, I'm Tarsha McCormick. I'm the head of diversity and inclusion for ThoughtWorks. I have been with ThoughtWorks for about 16 years doing some of everything in the people space, moved into the head of diversity and inclusion role in January. I'm really excited to be here and network with everyone.
All right. So I think we're going to get coverage. I think a friend of mine, Michelle Quinn from the Merck, who does a very good job on this topic too, by the way, is here. So give her kudos too. And I'm going to take notes while these guys are speaking because I want to do a story too. So it might be look a little weird, but I'm actually taking notes while I'm moderating. I've tried this before. Sometimes it works really well.
Multitasking, huh?
Often it's spectacularly bad. So let's kind of just we're not going to bitch and moan about what hasn't happened. Nope. We're going to fast forward to where we are today and what has happened, and try to keep this positive and prescriptive in the way we approach it. That's what I want to ask you guys. So since this became a covered topic, finally, have you seen encouraging signs in the interview process and the way you recruit people? Any factors? Just and here's one thing I'm going to ask you to do: interrupt me, talk over me, talk to one another, ask each other questions. Right. I'm just a traffic cop, so I'll just throw it out, and whoever wants to answer, go for it.
It's a conversation, and this hasn't been on the, I think, platform for a while now. So in the past couple of years, we actually can talk about what we need to do and what's needed. So I think at the very least, that's amazing for all of us, to be perfectly honest. Being in the space for almost a decade, it hasn't been as... Do you think that this kind of change would eventually take place, or were you getting frustrated? That's one thing that always kind of, and you know what, be honest. Yeah. Oh, right. Like, I think it's been up and down. Like, we have conversations and then it goes away. But again, over the past 24 months, it's been really the forefront. So we've been able to keep that as a topic and something that all of us want to help about and figure out what we need to do next.
What I'm excited about is inclusion, because I really want to give a big up to Wayne and Melinda for not calling this tech diversity, because it's this right. I think we've talked about diversity, we've talked about the issue, we talked about who isn't in the room, who isn't in this, and who isn't in that. But my next layer, or where I think the conversation needs to go, is talking about how are we going to retain and keep these people that we are trying to hire? How are we making our space more palatable, amenable, friendly, welcoming, all these things in a very genuine and authentic way that is going to last? Because I feel like if you just hire a bunch of diverse people and they don't feel welcome, they're going to go right back out the door. And then where are we? So I think, really companies who are looking to build out their diversity programs need to start with figuring out what's welcoming and what's not welcoming. You can do unconscious bias training, although I would say kind of go a layer deeper and have those conversations with managers about their hiring processes, their promotion processes, all of those things before you go out to Howard University or Spelman or whatever and say, we want you, because we want to make sure we want you and we want you to stay. That's the real conversation.
Absolutely, because once you, as we like to say, get the bodies in the seat, how are we going to keep people there, right? So we like to say we can invite you to the party, but are we going to invite you to dance, right? Right, and it has to be a place where you feel welcome, you feel like you can be your authentic self, and if we aren't engaging employees at every level, then we aren't going to be able to retain them.
So do inclusion first. So
that's a great quote about the dance.
It's not mine. Okay.
Oh, it is now.
Now it is. Now it is.
Tweetable.
Right.
Very. Was there a seminal moment when, say, Jesse Jackson got involved, or did that? Because I remember
Jesse got me my job.
Oh, tell us about that.
So I don't know how many people know the story. I like to tell it because I like to give props to, people who did it. Jesse sent a letter to all of the kind of major, so they're doing it in waves. They're the tech titans. There's the Intels, the HPs, the Ciscos, and then there's, I don't know, us, the tweeners or something, right? I don't know, the Yelps, the Ubers, the Twitters, and then kind of like the VC layer and the really, really small startups. And so they sent letters probably about a year and a half ago to LinkedIn, Yahoo, Yelp got a letter, and then I got a phone call. So that was great. Every time I see Jesse, I'm like, thanks, you got me a job. What's up? Right? It's great. I'm thankful.
So what his involvement, did that tip things, or did that, because I know when he talked to us, and we did a diversity panel at Stanford, that created some really good momentum. And just between us, that panel was hard to put together, because we had some big companies that were really, really nervous about working with us. Really, they wondered what our agenda was. Our agenda was like talking about a topic you don't want to talk about. That's the agenda. Imagine that.
Anyone who's familiar with Jesse Jackson and his work, we all respect what he's done for a variety of communities. And I think for us, it goes back to, again, having that conversation and people who, again, you don't always know what you don't know. So some folks didn't really realize that diversity was an issue, surprisingly. But that's real.
So that's true, though. That's true.
It opened up that framework to say, like, it's an issue, and we need to figure out what we need to do to move things forward.
There was always that meritocracy.
Right. Like, is it something? Is it not?
Right. And
is it pipeline? Is it air? It's always
all that.
It's all of that. And then
So you guys are, I mean, your companies, you guys are up and coming companies. I mean, you are unicorns, whatever you want to call you. I know that's kind of has a weird connotation, but in the event, though, you guys are the future, and I'm just wondering, is it easier, or is it for a smaller, a younger company, like Dropbox is trying to do this, Stripe is, I think, try to create a culture of inclusion versus a company that's well entrenched, that's been around for decades, that's trying to, Intel always says this, they're trying to move their ship, right. And it's hard to do that when you have 100,000 people, employees.
I think it's hard either way.
Okay.
I think it's hard. I think kind of where we need to start, which is also, again, what Wayne and Melinda want to start talking about, is the VCs when they are starting these companies and setting the right tone. Because I'm coming into Yelp 10 years later. They've been around for, almost 11 years now to try and change something. And it doesn't matter if it's 4,000 people or 40,000 people. There's 10 years of history, there's 10 years of processes, there's 10 years of a way of thinking that I have to try and change in, tech speed, which is like yesterday. So that's going to be, kind of hard to do. So I do acknowledge that a 145,000 person company global is definitely hard to move the needle. But I think I don't want to discount how hard it is for all of us over here as well.
So how do you do that? Are there certain types of programs you can put in place? So there's some sort of, can you guys offer me an example of something that you do within your organization that you think has changed things?
I mean, it's conversation. Really, it's starting with talking and listening more. Actually, I do a lot more listening. As you notice, that's not my strong suit. But you have to listen to where people are with their comfortability around diversity, with their fluency around talking about it, and then go in with anecdotes or suggestions or solutions. But people always talk about the CEO needs the head of the ship kind of needs to come out and say something. And on one hand, I agree with that, but on the other hand, you have to look at who's affecting the day-to-day lives of your employees, and that would be like the middle layer of management. And so that's who I focus my attention on having conversations with, and we do it in one big room. We have fireside chats with different people, and we close the door, and we just get real about what's going on with you, with your team, how you're interacting, how you're promoting, all that. So
I can't see the clock down there, so I'm turning my phone on so I can see the time. I can't quite see it. So anyway,
but I do believe that it's easier for a new company, for a smaller, company, for that startup, to set the tone at the beginning, right? You have to make diversity a priority. You have to bake it into the fiber of what you want your organization to be. You have to have someone who is focused on diversity and inclusion and set that tone. So as you're hiring people, you are already laying that foundation.
I think the earlier that you can bring someone in to think about this, or that you can ingrain it into your culture, the easier it's going to be. It's hard at any level, though. I think it's especially important, though, to have someone focused on this, but ensure that the entire company is bought in and working towards it, because us as diversity and inclusion leads or heads or specialists or what have you alone are not going to solve this problem. Just because we exist doesn't mean the job is going to get done. And so it's our job to make sure that people are fully aware of what this issue is, why it's important. And one thing that I would say in terms of gaining buy-in and really helping companies understand, and helping your leaders, your middle managers understand the importance of this, is creating a safe space for them to ask questions. Because time and time again, I hear a white male come to me and say, hey, I have a lot of questions on this, but I am scared shitless to ask them because I'm going to get my head bit off, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to offend anyone. So it's not necessarily anything intentional or malicious going on, but they need a space to be able to understand and ask these questions because it's uncomfortable.
And I always always say it has to be a team sport. So just piggybacking on what you just mentioned, like it has to be the business leaders, executives, employees, anyone should be able to come up to any of us and say, this is something that would be great for a D&I initiative or a program, et cetera. So that's the one thing I think that we all have to keep in mind, like it has to be the entire company. It can't just be us. It can't be just the one or two loners who are super passionate about what we're doing. We have them, we adore you all, but we need everyone to be involved. And I think like getting your ERG started off at the very ground level is awesome. Having that support system, not just for that particular demographic, but so that executives can see like the value add of having folks focused and supported, and all of that is super ingrained. I think when you think about the lower level of just being present about what diversity needs to be.
And the other piece I was just going to say is just like from the jump, like expanding your recruiting perspectives, like making sure, like I know some companies start with maybe 4 or 5 target universities that they go out to and reach out to and make sure that we host events for, but just expanding that reach at the very beginning is super duper important, and all of that will help just ingrain the inclusive culture as we move forward.
Do we know anecdotally if some of the larger companies that traditionally went to 10 colleges tops or universities are expanding their recruiting pool? I mean, is there any evidence of that?
We did.
We are.
I don't know.
Oh, you guys are, but I'm just wondering beyond you. Yeah. Are you? Yeah.
It's needed. It's
Yeah.
necessary. Like,
I mean,
Oh.
I would assume that these companies are going out to bigger places, but again, it's who's on the recruiting team, who's at those events, because if the recruiting team is all white and you're at Howard University, sends a mixed message a little bit. So there's a ton of work to do. I want to go back to your point about the employee resource groups, because being a person, I just got a new person, Nabila, where are you? Who's on my team, but it's a team of 2, and I don't think it's going to get any bigger anytime soon. And so the employee resource groups, I use them, they don't even know. I use them a lot to do the work that needs to get done in terms of having those tough conversations, feeding information back to me and the executives about what's going on with their particular group, whether it's LGBT, whether it's parents, because being a parent in a startup can be weird too. If it's the group of us old folks over 40, we get together and have these little pockets, and they feed me information about changes that need to be made and what can we do, and then those changes happen. So I leverage the employee resource groups a lot.
Actually, sorry, did I?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. If you guys raise your hands like you did, go for it. I will start asking questions. Good.
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm the founder and executive producer of a career exploration website, careergrowth.org. And we interview diverse and accomplished women, so you can find them anywhere on our site. But my question is, how do each of you connect the dots economically to management's behavior? I'm thinking about Twitter specifically. I mean, your base is, loyally, solidly African American. I mean, how are people understanding it's not just a nice thing to do, it's not just a morally correct thing to do, it affects your bottom line. I mean, all the data shows diverse teams win. How do you do that within your C-suites?
With the data, like you just mentioned. Yeah.
And I think for us, we traditionally haven't really focused on figuring out all of the demographics that really truly use Twitter at a very high level, but we get it. And for us, it's figuring out how can we have an ambitious goal to make sure that we touch every person on the planet, so we want to make sure that the employee base is the same. So that's something that internally, we're working on now. It's going to take some time, and we've really put a lot of muscle behind it and have executive buy-in. And Jack is super supportive of all of that. So we're working on it now, but we have some room to move. The other thing I wanted to just mention quickly is that even with external partnerships that's something that younger companies can do to help with their diversity and inclusion metrics. So for me, I love working externally with partners to figure out like what that pipeline can look like and how they can help us with branding, etc. So really like bringing them into the fold and saying like, this is where we are, how can you help? I think some of us, like prior to this open conversation, we haven't been as open about like what we need assistance on. But that's something that I also look to my partners to help me with. But we're working on that.
So one of the things I want to just mention, maybe for some other companies that are here, is that I have a diversity council of my own that's made up of C-suite recruiting leads, and we meet once a month. We used to meet weekly, which was a bit much, but we meet once a month now. I tell them stories that I'm hearing from the ground level. So their mouths are usually open, like, oh my God, that's happening in our company. Oh my God, somebody said that. But they need to hear it because who's going to tell them, right? And so that's my job. I'm the messenger. I also share articles and stories about other companies and what's going on. And then we talk about like solutions. What can we do today? So I think any company, anybody who in here wants to start a diversity, I think like having a council of C-suite, like people who can really help you push the needle. Sharing those stories and getting them thinking helps. And then every time I see an article, I don't care if it's about Caitlyn Jenner or whatever, I'm forwarding it on to them. I just forward it on. Like, here's how to talk about Caitlyn Jenners that may come through our door. Here you go.
So I would echo the importance of having a D&I council. So we started one earlier this year as well, and it is a great opportunity to be able to connect with the different ERGs and communities within your company, because they are the pulse of what's going on, and they're going to let you know what is important to them. So we can create a plan, but if it's not what the employees want, then it's not going to be effective. So it's really important that you use your D&I council to help you create a plan together.
This lady.
I think I've got the mic.
We got 20. Oh, I'm sorry.
Got the mic.
Can we go you and then her? We got like 20 minutes, so we're going to try to get as many questions. So if one question, that'd be one answer, so we can just jump around on the panel.
My name is Jocelyn, and I've spent most of my career running large engineering organizations. And I want to talk about the dance floor, not the party invitation. And specifically, I want to talk about career development, especially in technical roles, for people who don't match our stereotypes of the alpha technical party. And I've noticed a lot of the literature coming out of sort of the diversity and inclusion kind of academic work surrounds like your promotion practices, like do you have a committee, who nominates, is there peer feedback? And what I think is all that stuff is kind of downstream of where I see a lot of problem areas, which is, I don't necessarily, it's one thing to second guess have somebody reached a promotability level and maybe we haven't recognized it. But I think to even reach that level, you need projects that stretch and challenge you. And so I think that the real career development actually happens far upstream of a promotion decision. And so what I'm wondering is, what tactics have you seen work in your organizations with your engineering managers to actively develop the careers of people so they don't get left behind?
Anybody want to take that one?
I can take it.
Yeah, take it. Then I'll go after you.
So one thing that I think that we've had some success with at ThoughtWorks is really understanding what the employee, or the thought worker, as we like to call them, what they want to focus on and what their goals are, and trying to put in place a targeted assignment for them, and sharing their goals and their focus with the project managers so that they can try to figure out how to bake in project opportunity to continue to help them learn and grow. So everybody from our people leads to resource management to that project team should have an idea of what the thought worker wants to focus on.
So again, I'm going to go back to the employee resource groups. We have a group called Awesome Women in Engineering, which is not... there's someone here who's actually the leader of the group. Just gave me a shout out. And we leverage that group quite a bit to provide professional development, career development, feedback. We also have men that are a part of that Awesome Women in Engineering group who kind of carry back the issues and concerns to leadership. We also have a very supportive SVP of engineering who gets it. Apparently his mother is a proponent of women in tech, and so she talks to him quite frequently about things. So maybe you can get to the parents of these engineering managers. And then kind of more, more on a serious note, we really have, as diversity leaders, so I'm a part of HR, but I'm not an HR business partner. And so I am intimately involved with the HR business partners that support those groups who actually do have those performance management conversations. And so they're bought into what we're trying to do as a company when it comes to diversity. And so, so they carry the message to those managers. So I think, having a relationship with HR is key too.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So my name is Linda also. We'll keep the Lindas going. And hi, Anitra. I wanted to speak to some history, and I wanted to pick up on Rachel on the ERGs in particular. So those of you who know me, I've been around a long time. Apple in the 80s, Accenture in the 90s, Google in the aughts. And what I've noticed, I was talking to a young man, African-American at HP, last week. Somebody referred him to me, and he didn't even know who Ken Coleman was. And Ken Coleman and Howard Smith collectively recruited more Black and Latino engineers and other people into HP in the 80s and 70s and 90s. And so this young man's been at HP 6 years and he didn't even know who Ken Coleman is. So what I'm saying is what's happened is that the collective history has been lost. Those people who are under 35, 40 really don't know what we did in the 80s, right, and the 90s. And so a lot of this road has already been traveled and paved, but then it was cobbled up in the economy, the economic downturn or whatever, so they're starting over again. So how are you kind of reclaiming some of that history? Any of you can speak to this because you're all kind of more in the new tech companies, and I see this very much in the larger tech companies.
Anybody want to talk about it?
Although we're still working out some of the details, for us, it goes back to the employee resource groups, like figuring out, Linda, like how can we get you back on site to talk to the employee resource groups about best practices and what that looks like? How can we get Ken Coleman? Like, I'm very familiar with Ken, and he's amazing. So I want everyone following behind me to know who he is and what he did to really pave the way. So for us, that's part of what we're doing, but I'm actually like open and would love to hear like other suggestions on what we could do, but that's part of it, like making sure that from a very broad standpoint that we have anyone coming back who paved the way, who's made a real dent or mark in this space to come back and just teach us. We still need that, seriously.
A friend of mine last night was at dinner talking about this. This has become my life inside and out now. So she was like, maybe this can all be solved with just an American history class. I was like, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, no, I meant you. Closer to me. Stand up. Do you have a ponytail?
The other you.
Yeah. The lady in front of you. I'm sorry. She's in the fourth row on the end. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw you wait. I'm sorry.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question that like all the processes that you guys are including in the tech companies are great, but I want to focus more on the hiring process for like the people outside. So I've heard a lot of people that, go to the Twitters, the Yelps, and do the interview process, and at the end, they have more experience than like white male or white women, and they don't get chosen. So I want to know like if you guys have any like things in place to see why are they not picked. Hey, let's get together, let's talk about it. Like, what are you guys doing apart from like meeting with the engineers and everything to improve those numbers that are not getting picked?
I can speak to this. So we actually did an evaluation of candidates coming through and through the candidate funnel and where certain populations were falling out. And the reason that we did this is because we didn't want to just necessarily try like removing names from resumes, for example, if that wasn't the issue that we were having. And we actually found that like there was no bias in the name in that initial screen or stage. And so by figuring out exactly where we needed to pinpoint where people were falling out in the process, we were able to actually use research and things that we did to understand what tweaks we needed to make and where. So for example, we found that once women came on site for engineering roles at Pinterest, they actually outperformed men. But we weren't getting enough women in at the top of the funnel. And so what we did is we really buckled down on our sourcing efforts and are really working to get more women in at the top of the funnel, because we know that's where the system is broken, not necessarily at the initial screen or in the interview process. And surely there are things we can do to level the playing field and ensure that you know, everyone is on equal ground.
My name's Doug Floyd, and I know Jesse Jackson's been actively involved in this whole efforts, but I know Barbara Lee has just been, thank you, has just started up a task force actually with the Congressional Black Caucus. Yeah. I was wondering if you have any plans with them or what you're going to do moving forward with that task force.
Go ahead. You go first.
So,
got the mic.
Actually just was informed about, I've heard about the Congressional Black Caucus. We actually invited them to Pinterest when they were here earlier this month, but they were unable to make it. And I know that next week they're having an event in DC that we're hoping to be involved in. So.
Yeah. Oh, you want to look at? Yeah, sure. Let's just burn through as many questions as we can. Seriously. Yeah.
My name is Linda Well. I just started a company called Talent Reconnect, and Rachel and I spoke when I was just getting going.
Yep.
And I'm working primarily with women who graduated from top business schools or looking to return to the workforce, and I'm focused on MBAs across the world. I know I worked at Stanford for 12 years. But as I've gotten into this, I realized that ageism. I realized what a strong bias ageism is, which applies not just to anybody of any particular color. Hopefully all of us will be over 40 or, God forbid, over 50 at some point. So, and it's just to see all this amazing talent just be overlooked. I mean, the tool we tend to use is a returnship to get these women into companies.
Yeah.
Kind of a low wage they take for 10 weeks and hopefully convert to permanent. But I'm curious if the conversation that comes up in any of your very young companies, and I've walked into many of them, and God bless if you find anybody over 40. So I'm curious if this is a conversation that happens at all, and what, if anything, we can do to help combat it.
Yeah, I mean, again, these employee resource groups, they approach me all the time about when are we going to start, kind of our group. And just as a diversity leader, I have to really focus myself, focus my executives, and focus my recruiting teams on kind of certain areas. I can't tell them, go look for veterans, LGBT, like I can't, they'll be scattered and I won't get anywhere. And so for me, I had to really focus in on the lowest numbers, the lowest underrepresented groups. But on another note, though, we, as a company, just don't have as many openings for MBA talent or need for MBA talent in our company. Yeah, okay, so the undergraduate or the jobs for new grads, salaries are pretty entry level, I'll say it that way. The salaries are pretty entry level. So it's been tough to get someone my age to consider an entry level. I mean, we do have people on the sales floor who are there and doing it, but for most of us who have mortgages and things like that, we really can't afford to take that step back. So, but it's not that we're not trying. We do have a few people.
We're going to make that a focus of coverage next year.
Yeah, we just talked about that backstage. Yeah.
That cuts across everything. You're right. Yeah.
Really
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. The glasses. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm an engineer at SurveyMonkey, and I hear so much in the media about let's fix the gender problem in engineering and in tech. And even conversations within my own company, a lot of the conversation is about gender. And I feel like, I just want to, how do we expand that conversation and stop just talking about gender? I don't know if it's just because, I'm a straight, white, cis woman that people assume that I only care about getting more women into tech and that I don't care about, people of color and women of color in particular and LGBT and, disabilities and lots of different groups that are underrepresented. But I feel like the conversation always steers towards, even the I Look Like an Engineer event, there was press there that saw our panel of speakers and then walked away and said like, oh, they're trying to get more women into tech. But it was not about women, just women. So how do we steer that conversation away from like just gender and bring in a more intersectional like element to that?
That's a great question.
So starting with gender is probably the safest and easier thing to focus on. So a lot of companies start there, but I agree with you. We have to figure out how we move beyond that, and I think it takes conversations like this, and also when you are looking at your hiring plan and your diversity plan, you have to bake in looking at other underrepresented groups, and you have to start to look at how all of the different categories intersect. We have to try to move it beyond just gender. We have to look at race. We have to look at socioeconomic status as well as sexual identity and orientation. And we just have to keep trying to push the needle forward and talking about it at every opportunity that we get.
Yeah. Well, just one quick thing about that. As a woman in tech, I think you have a voice, and opening and asking a question in a forum like this is a great way to start. All the email addresses of the people covering diversity are out there. Find them, pitch them, tell them. Talk to your leadership and your managers about, hey, yeah, that's great that we're going after women, but have you thought about this? So, I mean, just keep talking about it. I think we all have a responsibility to kind of be a part of it, the conversation.
Do you have a question? I'm sorry. Did you raise your hand? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Zishan. First of all, thank you everyone for coming out and putting this conference together. It's pretty exciting. So my question is basically, you mentioned that we need to have more people coming to the top of the funnel. And thank you for bringing up people with disabilities, and that doesn't really happen too often. So, so I'm just here asking people that are employers, trying to understand, like, how can I, or people that are working in the disability space, how can we bring more people to the funnel, to the top of the funnel, so that way we can actually, bring this as a legit group that actually has talent, that's unemployed, but really at a high rate, 80% unemployment rate. So how do we what would you suggest are some of the strategies that we should be using to get people to the top of the funnel?
I think the first thing,
Sorry.
the first thing we have to do is what happened with gender and race, which was what are the numbers? Like, how many disabled people do we have at our companies? And right now, that's not something that's being discussed, similar to age. Companies aren't releasing their age demographics. And so I think at a baseline, the first thing we need to do is understand what's the problem before we can think about, okay, now how do we get these employees to the top of the funnel, or these candidates to the top of the funnel? And then, like, we're going to do that the same way that we're going to tackle this problem any other way, which is attraction. So what are we doing to deter these candidates from applying? Like, are we creating welcoming environments? Do our offices accommodate, we have all these fancy tech furniture and stairs and what have you, like, is that accommodating to people with physical disabilities? Like, are we creating environments where people with mental disabilities can get support? So I think there's a ton of work that needs to be done, and like, it's not being talked about enough, similar to age. And I think we're all trying to tackle these issues that we have the data for, and there's so many, and there's so much unseen diversity, and we're really just at, I think, like, the base of the mountain right now.
For sure.
And working right now to get more people in the room who are sorely underrepresented currently, and there's always more work to do.
Yeah. The lady in the, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Karita Merritt with UNCF. It stands for United Negro College Fund. My question for you all is, what are your companies doing to connect to HBCUs, which stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities, as far as preparing them for technical careers and hiring them?
I didn't hear that last part.
As far as preparing our students, HBCU students, for technical careers and hiring them as well, so recruiting them.
I think it's like anything else for us when we go to campuses, and we're doing much more at HBCUs and HSIs this year. I think it's for us just as practitioners to just help the students be prepared. So I don't think it's necessarily anything you all need to do, but we need to keep having that conversation. I know there's a summit that happens annually now in Palo Alto that we all should, like all of the tech industry and companies should attend, just to kind of get at least a baseline of what you all need. But I think it's us. Like, we have to be able to have those like genuine conversations and authentically tell students like what we're looking for and how you can move forward if that's the choice. So I think it's up to us. Really quickly, I also wanted to go back to your question, external partnerships again, when it comes to the community, like figuring out like how can we connect with the disability community and what we should do and where would be like the next best steps. So I always look to my external partners to help me kind of guide how we should move forward, but we definitely have work to do.
Can we have time for 2 more questions? Is that okay? Okay, sure. Yes. Hi.
No. CEO and co-founder of an organization called Hack the Hood, and this is such an awesome panel and such an awesome conference, but I want to bring up the issue of income and class, because we work with low-income young people of color, 16 to 24, who are coming from communities where they think being a good job might be being a security guard or janitor. And in our boot camps, they learn about tech, but probably about 40% of the young people we work with don't have the economics and haven't been academically oriented up till now enough that they're on a straight college path. And we all know that women and low-income people of color, you know, going to get a 4-year degree and then get an advanced degree, like so many people I've met of color at companies like yours who are top talent, our young people are not on that path. So I would love to know to what extent you guys are thinking about other kinds of apprenticeships, job shadowing, partnering with groups like us to do certificate programs. We're getting very interested in how do we help the 30 or 40% of our young people who aren't on a straight college path now get to $20 an hour so they could afford to work part-time and go to school and get careers in tech. So I'm sure you guys are thinking about that, and I would just love to hear more about how you're thinking about people on the lower economic side who may not be on that top-level track through grad school into a job in your company.
In general, I'll just start. For us, that's where we started with partnerships, like making sure that we had students come on site and could job shadow and could learn about like what it is to be an engineer at Twitter or somewhere else. So that's something that has been ingrained in us even prior to having a diversity and inclusion initiative. So that's something that we'll continue to do. And I believe Caroline B, she's good people. She's already, like, she already has a relationship with you all. But I think just in general, for us, it's continuing to have like the job shadows, to continuing to say, come on site. You can watch what we do. You can learn from us, and having mentors, people who want to stay connected with the students on a long-term basis is something that we definitely like promote and do on a regular basis. So for us, it's actually been ingrained prior to us even having more outreach with external partnerships.
Yeah.
Was that the time?
Yeah. This is the last. Yeah. You are a great audience, by the way. I love.
It's been fun.
I love, you know, and I apologize. I should have said you ladies or you all instead of you guys. That's a bad verbal tick on my part.
Oh, I don't mind.
I don't know, but I'm getting. No, some people put it on Twitter, and I think they're right. So anyway, no, I love it though. I like honest feedback, and I like the fact that you are engaged, and you're asking better questions than I did, and you're also. Oh, we got more time. Good. All right. Oh, I thought it was. Oh, okay. We can ask more questions.
Ask your questions.
Hi, my name is Charlene Crooks. I'm actually with the Department of Rehabilitation, so I'm kind of on the outside looking in as far as not being in the tech industry. But I was really happy to hear about the diversity question for individuals with disabilities because I'm a community resource specialist, and my main role is really trying to work with our community partners who then kind of pave the way to help place these individuals with disabilities in these awesome jobs. What I constantly hear is the struggle they have of placing individuals with disabilities in the tech sector. I mean, there's some companies like SAP and I believe Microsoft who have these awesome programs, but it mostly focuses on folks on the autism spectrum. But there's this void for folks who have, you know, physical or mental disabilities that aren't really getting in the door. So I guess I'm coming from a place of what can I do or what can the department do, or folks who are also in my position, to kind of break that mold and provide the maybe resources that tech companies don't have to really make the place comfortable and truly accessible to individuals with disabilities.
So I think, first of all, I've been in my role for about 10 months now, and not one person from any organization with disabilities have reached out to me. So I think one thing is pop me an email, pop any of us an email. I mean, diversity and heads of diversity and diversity and inclusion program managers. I mean, go to LinkedIn and go down the titles and just start pinging all of us. So that's one. Two, we need education as well. I think Melinda said it best. We all have a lot to learn. Just because we're in our roles doesn't mean we know everything about everybody, right? And one of the hardest things for me is to think about everybody all the time. Right, so bring it to our attention. I think that's probably the first thing. Educate us on what the needs and what the data says about that, and then we can start talking about what that looks like for each of our companies, which will be different. It won't be the same.
Tell us what you need.
Yeah,
let's talk.
Hey, so I really liked all of your points about doing better outreach to more universities. And I think that I'm going to touch on this wonderful woman's points about outreach maybe outside of university degree programs. Do any of your companies currently do? I know one of the best things about tech is you've got the chance to get into it without a degree. I think most of the people I meet in technology or programmers are not necessarily holding degrees in computer science. Are you guys doing any outreach? Are you folks?
Well,
are y'all doing any outreach? Are y'all doing any outreach to folks outside of university programs? And I'd really love to hear about that.
So we are at ThoughtWorks. We had a group of our employees spend quite a bit of time in Ferguson, and they were really able to connect with the community there and saw a real need for some of the youth. And so they actually created a boot camp and gave the students laptops and taught them how to code. And we're continuing to support the community right now.
We're also, so we've hired a few engineers from boot camps, which is a non-traditional path to tech, and I think oftentimes yields a lot more diversity than your traditional four-year institutions. And so we're actually looking to formalize that hiring into an apprenticeship program later this year, where we are looking for those who are in career transition or who are, are getting back into tech, or who came into tech in a different way or another, whether it be boot camp or other form, to provide them with, a 3-month almost like internship-like opportunity. Like, we try them out, they try us out, because it's a two-way street. And then with the hope of converting them to full-time. So I think a lot of these programs are popping up, and a lot of companies are thinking about them. So
one thing I'd like to add is that there are other jobs outside of being a coder and an engineer. So that's a great point. No offense to anybody in here. No offense at all. But at Yelp, my demographic that I'm working with is about 55% of our employee base is in sales. And so we work with Europe, which I don't know how many of you know the community organization around Europe. And we started a sales internship program, so bringing students who don't have a degree, teach them how, kind of go through a sales internship, teach them how to sell. Selling, to me, is like the basis of everything we do. You have to sell your product, you have to pitch, so like that's a good place to start and a quick way for us to change our demographics of our company. But I love coders, so don't I didn't mean that.
Hi, my name's Elle. I manage teams in product and engineering at OneLogin, and I wanted to ask a question. I do a lot of interviewing, like every day, for product and engineering roles, and I'm one of the only female managers, so like obviously it's very important to me, the diversity topic, but I also see people all the time in the process who say, hey, I went through all the resumes and picked out all the women and looked through them, and I'm like, it's really, I bristle at the concept of like, I just went through all the women, forget everybody else who applied. And I think that's kind of common. People are like selecting for this one diversity trait, or like, and I think that's something that's not talked about very often. So it's really hard for me to navigate that balance as a manager and say like, I'm not gonna judge someone for being a white male either, or like, I mean, seriously, it's complicated. So how do you navigate that space, especially when you see people who are well-meaning, saying like, hey, I spent an hour last night going through and picking out these candidates that I think are diverse. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think you educate them, right? Although you're well-meaning, that's not the way that we should approach this, but I think that when you're selecting your candidates, try to get a diverse population and then select the best candidate from there.
Yeah. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I don't know if there's a mic back there.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Omar. I work at Stripe. There was a couple of things that I think Ms. Smyrnit from Hack the Hood touched on, and you all on the panel talked about earlier, which was one kind of income level and just kind of background coming into play, and then executive buy-in, C-level leadership. In the absence, in working in an environment where there may be the absence of, I guess, middle management or, employee research groups or other things that might be available in a more structured company that are a little bit further down the line, what advice would you have for someone who works at the company and is, I guess, eagerly trying to get just a level of awareness and kind of a level of just, acknowledgement from the executive team or the, C-level leadership that, that may not be there, due in part to the fact that they just may not have an understanding of different backgrounds. If you've started a company with your 5 friends from college and you all have the same background and your network has completely grown from that, what advice would you have for kind of just, I guess, pulling the curtain over their eyes?
I let articles speak for me. Articles written by very smart people from Harvard Business Review or some other, Medium or anything. So when you're out reading things, it's just easy to kind of quickly forward along something. And I think, you kind of keep doing that. Don't spam, but, kind of keep sending those messages. Eventually, an executive will read something that will resonate with him or her. And, kind of open the door to conversation. So that way you're not putting yourself on the line. This is conversation that's happening out in the world. It's an article. Just wanted to share and enlighten you kind of that way. That's how I did it.
Especially if you show them the business imperative of it, that's when they're going to perk up and listen. And I think that that's one way to start, and then you can, really start to implement more change that way.
Can you ask like one quick, make a quick question?
Hello?
Young man?
I got the mic.
Oh, sorry. Wait, who? Oh, wait. Sorry. Whoa. Sorry.
Stephanie Lampkin, founder and CEO of Blendor. I know 3 of you. So I have a question for the 4 of you. To what extent are you comfortable with airing your dirty laundry? So one of the things that I want to do on my platform is have you showcase your female and minority executives, even if that number is 0, even just to kind of create some competition even amongst you around putting some fire to get things going on many levels. Because I think the problem with diversity is the lack of diversity. People don't see people that look like them in positions of power, which gives them. So, yeah, that's it.
It's already out there, so we have no choice.
Yeah, we're
just like, you can see it. So, no, Stephanie, I'm with you on that. Like, it's already out there, the lack of or what's represented. So we don't really have any choice. And that helps us, again, educate and advocate to get more women in power and minorities in leadership positions.
Thank you guys. Were fantastic. I love the Twitter comments, by the way. Really good. Really good. Honest. I like that. You're fantastic, audience.
Just tearing up the stage.
Fantastic audience. Thank you so much. Hey, I'll put it right here. Anyway, thank you all so much. Everyone was terrific. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.